And we're live. Excellent. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction author and an eclectic reader. And today is a Wednesday. Now, I did have a stream last Wednesday, and I normally do every other Wednesday, but I sort of rejiggered things. So last Wednesday was a little special aside. So we're going to get back on a different track. Today's going to be our actual Wednesday wrap up. And for today, I've got quite a stack of books. Oh, and I have another ebook and I was going to use it, my e-reader, as a prop, but I will just share the Storygraph page so that we don't have to get up and see if it has enough battery, because it did not half an hour ago and it's charging too slowly. So what have we got for you today? 8 books in 3 weeks. So a good roundup. I had a funny question of the day to share today. So I'll put this up and say, question of the day. Today is National Dimples Day. Can you see them? They were more pronounced when I was 3 years old. So here's a question. Can you remember a literary character that has dimples, or maybe just a noted smile? Maybe something wrong with their smile. Let me know if you can think of one. Otherwise, we're going to jump into saying hello to the chat, and then I'm going to start with like half of the books, half of the report outs, take a little pause to talk about HRCYED and how close I got to finishing. It was pretty close. And then we'll jump back into the last half of the book reviews. So there will be an intentional order of these, I promise. I promise. So to say hello to the chat, first of all, we had an early Eva in the comments, number 1. So I asked about anyone who had completed HRCYED because I hadn't seen it on Stephanie's channel. And Eva says, I know a few did. I think it was around 7 or 8 at the start of June. I haven't finished a single book yet myself. I'm winning at this challenge business. Well, if it's making you feel no better, no worse, then I'd consider that a win in this climate, right? So well done. That was for me. We had a cat paw here to say hello, hello. We have an Anita here, AF Stewart. Hi, hi, hi. Eva saying hello. Oh, no. Oh, internet, don't effing start again. Oh, I'm sorry to hear it's giving you trouble. We have a Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. Hello, hello. Yes, that's true. National Dimples Day. The Joker had a noted smile. Was he in something that you read? Perhaps a comic book? Oh, Eva says the Cheshire Cat, too. That's a good call. Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland is high on the list of referenced books. What was I just reading where someone made a reference to Alice? It might be it's the mystery. It must be the mystery that I'm reading. Good call. Good call. So I'll leave that up for a little bit. I'm going to start in on the first book, which is, these are going to be books that have something to do with HRCYED, right? So I got to share this page here. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it to share the cover because it's not in Storygraph. You know what? Let me see if I can get the ebook. We've got a whole 11% charge. That's not great for a half an hour. All right, here we go. Let's see if it'll open it up. Title page, table of contents. How about you show me the cover? Praise for the author. Anyway, while we're waiting for this, Murder in the Climate Assembly by Denise Baden. The reason I read this book was because it was a Kickstarter and it seemed like a good cause. So this is a author who is a philosophy ethics teacher as well as a climate activist. And she seemed to have a cool community going over on Kickstarter, and was interested in getting opinions about the issues that she addresses in the book. It is a fiction book. It's a murder mystery, but I found it to be a very structurally innovative murder mystery because the murder that is the inciting incident is a murder in a climate assembly being like a citizens assembly, and it is somehow being concealed. This was not addressed, but it's being concealed that it happened. And the person who is in charge of the assembly is asking for ethical advice about whether to report it to the authorities. And this person who he asked for ethical advice is the author or the author's persona. And the author is also teaching a class. So the author decides to offer it to the class because it's full of young people who have a stake in the climate future. And she has to teach them all this ethics and philosophy stuff before they can judge the case, right? So it's not working. It's not showing it to me. Oh, there we go. So that's the front, right? It's pretty simple cover. So we get a very structurally innovative structure in the book, but it was sort of all over the place. And I think it sort of came at the cost of character development and story flow. So I gave this a 3-star because there were a lot of interesting things. Like she did use the case study that was pretend for her class as a great model to teach us, the readers, about ethics and how to make decisions. So that was cool. But the sort of interplay with the faculty and the interplay with the admin and the interplay with the confidential climate assembly person just sort of felt tacked on. And so it wasn't that much of a success, in my opinion. So the first read of the lot. The next one, it's also here because that was an ebook and this is going to be an audiobook. Now this one I read, here we go, because of HRCYED, Kickstarter crowdfunded book. This is new release in the month that it was released. It's Julius Julius, a novel by Aurora Stewart de Pena. And you can see it was also not a success. I picked it because it was short and I was getting pressed for time. This is right before I gave up. This also had a sort of experimental feel. It was short. It had, I think, 3 points of view, and it switched voices between them only once. So we had the bulk of the novel in one voice, and then maybe 20% of that time was spent on a second voice, and maybe 10% of that was spent on a third voice. So they had an uneven weight, and it was unclear the connection that the readers were supposed to draw other than the main conceit. These are all people who have worked in an ad company that's been around since before the Common Era, which is fake, obviously. But it uses that conceit to point to funny things in the ad industry. And it's humorous, but not enough to laugh out loud. So, like, it was interesting. I was thinking it was funny, but like nothing that actually made me LOL. And it was cutting, but it was not subtle enough to feel earned. So if I was thinking about social commentary and things about the ad industry that change our perceptions, there was some like interesting digs there about the human history of that progression, but it didn't feel earned. It just felt like a cheap dig. So I didn't really enjoy this, and again, read it for HRCYED. Finally, third book for HRCYED. is this one, and this is a smashing success. So Dreaming the Serpent Spear by Manda Scott is the 4th in a series, and you do really have to read these in order. It's a completed series from the early 2000s, and there's even an author note at the back of this one that really made it even more interesting. So the series is about Boudica, and we meet Boudica, a historical figure in a very filled-in, fictionalized land. We meet this historical figure of Britain as she is growing up. We see the culture that surrounds her. We see the Roman invasion. We see initial relationships form and how strong they are and what they're based on. And then she takes us through the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th books where they are tested, broken, just really, really stretches her characters to the limit. So Boudica comes through this having lost a lot, and we see sort of the final battle in this. And before Common Era, 1st century AD, not really my specialty time period. So even though I do love the history of the UK, I wasn't sure exactly what happened. So I was hoping for a certain outcome. And that's not what happened. But I still appreciated the ending. So for this final resolution to the series finale, I would say the resolution was top tier. I kept wondering, how is she gonna make these two things connect? How is she gonna square the circle, if you will? And she did it beautifully. I love the characters. There's one tie-up that was sort of weird, but when I think about it, I'm like, okay, it's sort of setting up a different direction if she wanted to keep writing about this, but it was a little weird. But that's fine. I would say I really feel along with the characters in this series for this ending, and no, I will not spoil it as to what I was expecting and what I got, but just to let you know, I forget how movies end, and I am blissfully naive going into a lot of things. I can suspend my disbelief pretty easily. I'm good at that. It's like a superpower. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this series to people who like getting really involved in the characters' lives and don't mind like having their hearts torn and bleeding on the ground. Because that might happen in this book. Just saying. Manda Scott. And she's still writing. And Kat Paw knows she has a book that just came out. I don't know if you have received it or if it's still in pre-order, but I definitely still have your recommendation. And I'm waiting for that to act on it, I guess. I could do it this weekend since it's anti-Prime weekend, and bookshop.org in the US at least is offering free shipping to celebrate anti-Prime. But I did just order from Black Walnut Books, so maybe I've reached my cap for the weekend. So there are our first 3 books, and I'm going to take a little pause before I jump into a read-along book to just say hello to the chat. Leslie's here. Leslie with the new job, sneaking a listen while at work. Just found out there is a nearby cat cafe. That's adorable. I love it. Well, happy National Dimples Day, Leslie, if you're still here. I know, 7 minutes ago. Jim says Scarlett O'Hara exploited her cheek dimples in Gone with the Wind when she was flirting to get her own way. I cheated. I Googled. Oh, well, good answer. That is a good answer. Vivian Lee definitely had the dimples. So yeah, originally in a book. Well done. Okay, so we'll dispense with the question of the day. I'm going to move on to the book that I'm doing for a read-along, and it's a slow read-along. So it's only 1 chapter per month. So How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. Several people that I know and respect on Booktube have highlighted this book, and I've read it. And Grace at Books and Cooks is the one leading this read-along or reread. So Resisting the Attention Economy. And while this was written in 2018 or published in 2018, I think that there's a lot of really chilling parallels 7 years later for us to recall. So I'm just going to go over some of my notes and some of the things that sprang out at me for this chapter, which was about, here are my notes. Well, Anatomy of a Refusal. So for Booktube peeps who are familiar, you might be pleased to note that she talks about famous people like Diogenes, like Thomas Merton, like Bartleby, and Henry David Thoreau, who are all people who resisted the attention economy in some form or fashion in different eras. So in this, we're talking about people who resist, anatomy of refusal. I really liked some of the things that jumped out at me, that have bearing on what we're going through right now and what I am working to cultivate. So resisting the attention economy is about your attention being stolen and trying to take it back, right? Trying to think critically about things. At the very beginning of this chapter, she talks about the unknown being a threat. So that is a mindset, right? When you grow up, the unknown initially does feel like a threat, because if you walk outside, who knows what could come by and carry you off? A vulture, who knows? But when you get to be an adult and you are still afraid of the unknown, I feel like you can alter that with time and attention. So critical thinking is my sort of battle sword against this sort of mindset. The unknown can be scary, but I think if we have community and if we have critical thinking as a skill, like, it gets less scary, or we get more courage. Either way. I have a quote on page 67 to share. So I think I have like 3 quotes for this chapter. Page 67, the quote is, okay, so let me give some context. There's a performance artist who goes to work and stares out into space, and other people get worried about this performance artist because they think they're not doing their job, and they're suspicious of someone who doesn't do what everyone else is doing. So, yeah, this person unsettled her coworkers at Deloitte. But every person who, by refusing or subverting an unspoken custom, revealed its often fragile contours. So how fragile are our institutions? For a moment, the custom is shown to be not the horizon of possibility, but rather a tiny island in a sea of unexamined alternatives. Ooh, that's just, it's so well written. So yes, I initially thought of this as like the customs are fragile, our institutions are fragile. But also, if we never examine those institutions, like, maybe we don't know what we're missing. It's just a tiny possibility out of many, and it could be better. It's not always going to be worse. We could make something better. So I really liked that point. Let's see. We talk about the people that I mentioned. When she mentions Bartleby as an example, she goes on about him quite a lot, and how Bartleby in Dickens' novella, short story, answers a question and causes this whole kerfuffle because he negates the terms of the question. So in a similar instance, for example, in our society, if we're forced to make a binary choice, I don't know, election. Maybe that's a bad example. If we're forced to make a choice between 2 things, the choice is still there to negate the terms of that question, right? To say, I'd prefer not, right? And it's very philosophical. It's getting back into the what is possibility and how do you frame and what is the context, but I thought that was pretty neat, thinking outside the box. My next quote is from Henry David Thoreau on page 75. And this is, Grace talked a little bit about this in her check-in about chapter 3, and how people criticize Henry David Thoreau as an activist because, yeah, other people paid his fines for him. So his gesture was sort of an empty gesture to not pay the fines for something. But here's the principle he was standing on. And it was not paying tax into a system that was enforcing slavery. So let's see. While he understood that technically this meant breaking the law, Thoreau stood outside the question, like Bartleby, and judged the law itself. If the law is of such a nature that it requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say break the law, he wrote. Let your life be a counter friction to stop the machine. I thought that was really good too. So don't be an agent of injustice to another, even if that is the legal way to act. I thought that was really powerful. So if you're interrogating your actions and you're trying to live by your own code of ethics because the legal code is not exactly in alignment with that, then that is a good check, I think. If it requires you to be the agent of injustice to another. I like that. That was a good quote. Let's see. We've got something that relates to my climate action here. So, page 76, we're talking about different worlds, right? So if you have a set of ethical principles that require you not to be an agent of injustice, you can cultivate that sort of decision making, right? You can have a community around who agrees with you. You can exist outside the system in some ways, right? In the ways that you're allowed to, and step outside that question. And what makes that uncomfortable is the gray area, right? The uncertainty. So in the next page, she's explaining this. Viewing the present from the future, or injustice from the perspective of justice, Thoreau must live in the uncomfortable space of the unrealized. So he's thinking of this, maybe you want to call it a kingdom of heaven, or maybe you want to call it a land of justice, whatever it's called for you. You're thinking about this place that you want to bring into being, you want to manifest. And you can live like that and manifest that with your community. But the tension comes because it is unrealized in the world, right? There's all this other stuff around you. You haven't changed the whole world yet. You're just nurturing a seed, right? And so that made me think of my analogy of the runaway train. So the capitalist economy is the runaway train. And even though we can't stop it, what I feel like we should be advocating is building a track right next to it and building a different kind of train so that if we can, people who realize it's a runaway train can jump off onto it. There's some model being built alongside, and that is really in that area that is the unrealized. So like the land of justice looking on into injustice and trying to provide a space for them to jump to. So I liked that sort of parallel between the unrealized and the tension. Listen to the spy jets flying above us and the world that we can create here and now. So I thought that was really cool. Let's see. We've got the silent march. Yeah. Connectivity instead of solidarity, or sorry, instead of sensitivity. Oh, and then there was a couple points, page 83 and 89, where Jenny Odell talks about students used to have privilege. We used to have these areas for students at university in particular, where you weren't pressured to do something that contributed to the economy, right? Universities are for learning, they're for exploring, they're for forging bonds that will last the rest of your life. This is the ideal, right? They used to have the privilege or that space for attention, right? They were focused on their studies. They were focused on developing the values that would last them the rest of their life, hopefully with a few tweaks. And now that is no longer, because now the debt is the leverage. So that's been taken away because you have to go into debt to go to study. Now you're constantly thinking about the debt. You're constantly thinking about, how do I choose a path that will pay for this, rather than having that insulated space for learning and focusing. So your attention is stolen. Similarly, a few pages later on page 89, she talks about children. Children used to be a privileged class. They used to have space for attention. But that ground is lost as well, because childhood is now professionalized. You have to do something in kindergarten to get into the right grade school. You have to do something in grade school to get in the right junior high, high school, etc. Right? It's set up like a system, like an assembly line. And it's based on achievement, it's based on control, it's based on access and gatekeeping. And part of that control ends up being banned books, because you want to focus what those children have access to and which lines of the assembly line they're going to go down. And I think that is just ground lost. I think losing the exploration phase, losing that insulated space of discovery is a big loss. So stolen attention, children, students, that's just two of the specialized areas she talks about. And then the final quote for the slow read along I have in chapter 3 is page 90. And again, bringing it right back to now, the hyper present. Let's see. We're talking about an author, the precarity for any kind of organizing among millennials. The quote is from an author whose last name is Harris, Malcolm Harris. If we're built top to bottom to struggle against each other for the smallest of edges, so being competitive instead of cooperative, to cooperate not in our collective interest, but in the interest of a small class of employers, and we are, then we're hardly equipped to protect ourselves from larger systemic abuses. Oh, it's like the past is talking to the present. So, highly chilling observations from 7 years ago that really point us to our present situation. Great book. And I love the points that Grace is bringing up. I think several people are doing this read along and I love it. So thank you to Grace at Books and Cooks for highlighting this and having us think deeply about it. I love it. All right. So that is my update for that. And now we're halfway through the books. Let me catch up on the chat before I start on the HRCYED. Cat Paw is talking about Manda Scott's Boudica series. I've just got book 3 as audio, so I can listen when we don't have internet. We'll get book 4 next month. Excellent. Are you reading it on a library ebook? Is that why the internet was involved? That's a bummer. Okay, so as audio, at least you'll have access to it. Oh, that is a really hard one. So good luck. Good luck lasting through book 3. Woo! We have an Elaine in the house. Hello, hello. Read a series in order. Do people really do that? You do have to with the Boudica books, or you're going to be totally lost. And we have a Ven. Hello, hello. Always start a series on book 3 to be safe. No. Ven says, I'm hearing talk of one of my biggest pet peeves on current education. I don't know about this. I don't think it's about student debt here in America, so let me know. Yeah, I popped in and you were playing a game, and watching other people play games is not my thing. So I liked the stream and then I left, just to be transparent. Okay, so you might still be streaming and playing a game while you're saying hello. So I don't know if you'll be able to talk to the current education pet peeve, but if you do, let us know in the comments. Oh, Cat Paw says they're moving probably tomorrow. Oh my gosh, did you find something? Did you find something? Is it a temporary something? Is it an actual solution? I hope all my good thoughts have been helping have some sort of sliver of light through the clouds, friend. I hope so. Okay, so we've come to the break in the book reviews, and I'm going to do a little HRCYED update. If you don't know, HRCYED stands for Hardest Reading Challenge You'll Ever Do. It is a year-long reading challenge run by Stephanie Gillis over at QWERTY, her channel, and it highlights indie authors and LGBTQIA authors. So for those who like a prompt forest of ideas, it's a great one. She also threw in a bunch of like random other things, and I'm going to tell you how close I got, what was really successful, what was less successful, and why I'm glad I did it, but gave up 2 weeks early because, you know, why not DNF at 96%? Okay, so to do that, I'm going to share the screen with the Excel spreadsheet here. There we go. Share this tab instead. Pop back into here to add it to the stage. So this is the beautiful work that Stephanie did on an Excel worksheet, all the colors, the bingo, all the prompts. And in case you were wondering, we all made our own copies so that we could edit this. In case you were wondering how many prompts there were, that's how we start here. There were, by my count, 139. So I went through all of these and just did some quick math. I think I may be off one or two because like the book and then the thing in the book is another square and I just counted squares. So it might be like 137. Anyway, out of 139, all these green ones are ones that I completed and the red ones are ones that I did not. So let's just take an appreciative scroll through. Pretty good. Pretty good here. It's a lot of books. I didn't count books because some of them were double counted. So I just counted prompts. And out of 139, I got to 126, which is 13 short. And in percentages, that's a 90.6%. So I failed, but I got an A- in my world, in the world of my calculations. So that's pretty good. And I'm not mad at it. I had to stop because I was just pressuring myself for no reason. And it was getting me down. So here we are. As I go through these 13 red squares that I did not complete, I looked at the books that I wouldn't have read this year, except for HRCYED, and there were about 19. So it got me to read 19 books that I wouldn't normally have read, which is kind of cool. Of those, I would say about 5 were a solid 4-star or better. So it got me to read some really good books, which is great. And then some were less successful for me. So I will start with the positive ones, the ones where I wouldn't have necessarily picked it up, but I did, and I read it at that point, and they were really great. So I would recommend them. Starting at the top, we have Book and Dagger, which is a nonfiction that came out last year about World War II spies that were American academics, librarians, professors. They found themselves in the field of spies, running missions, doing covert ops with no experience. The Americans had to build from the ground up because they had deleted all of their spies because they said that was ungentlemanly. Someone in the interwar period didn't have his head screwed on tight. So anyway, that was really fascinating to learn about and very well done. Interesting stories, interesting lives followed, and lots of great information from that period. So great nonfiction. Moving down here, we've got where is it? 4+ book series. Here we go. So I could say I completed that. This is the Boudica series. So you see the 4 books there. I had a lot of trouble finding the book 2. And because of this, I knew this was the series that I wanted to do for HRCYED. I tracked down book 2. I bought it offline and was able to complete this. So love the series, love the characters, big fan of Amanda Scott now. So I'm definitely going to follow Cat Paw's advice and get her newer book because she seems like a firebrand. Really, really great figure to follow and listen to. So the book series is a great prompt. We've got, this is the next one that I would really recommend. A book recommended by a small booktuber. So Native Lady Book Warrior, who used to be more active on the channel, but still does an occasional thing. I had Heartbeat of Wounded Knee as one of my tagged books from her, and I finally got it. I finally read it, and it was great. And I was finally released from the purgatory of deciding whether to read that or Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, because given the choice between an Indigenous written book about an Indigenous massacre and a Indigenous massacre portrayed by a white person, I chose the Indigenous authored one and loved it. Really informative. Wounded Knee is a massacre in the 1880s that happened in Midwest America. There were a lot of things leading up to it. And this book is less a blow-by-blow of the massacre than talking about different pieces of culture and different strategies of survival. So I thought it was a very different lens to look at it through, and probably much more positive, leaving the scene with that. So I like that. Then we've got What was the next thing? Spiffbo non-finalists. So I got 3 out of 5 here. And the one that I really enjoyed was Bones to the Wind. It was in my last wrap up. I read it as an ebook. So I was hard pressed to read it because I don't like ebooks. But this is a book by Tatiana Obi that is about a very unique world in which dragons existed a long time ago. They still exist. People live in a civilization, a small center of civilization in the skeleton of an old dragon, and other people live on the outskirts. And so we definitely have a periphery and a center and a classed society. And we have pirates. So people are honored for being warriors in this society, but it's a very hard scrabble existence. And so you have to earn your keep. You have to earn your rations. So you're a warrior or you have some sort of magic power, and people on the outskirts often starve. So it's definitely high conflict. And we've got a black sheep, as I said, in my K-pop tag. So I really enjoyed reading this one. I finally sat down to read the ebook version, which is great. And there's more. She's written more since this. I'm like way behind, but Tatiana Obi is a great author, great writing, and definitely encourage people to pick her up. All right. Gatekeeper Staff, also on this list. I'm particularly happy that I read this as an audiobook from the library because the audiobook narrator of Gatekeeper Staff by Antoine Bandele was fantastic. She had a whole cast of characters. They were all differentiated. She had children, she had adults, she had Nigerian accents, she had different personalities, she had different ages. She had like non-human features and voices and sound effects. I just think they did such an amazing job. So if you're looking for a YA fantasy that uses West African cultural heritage in its magic system, cannot recommend Antoine Bandele, The Gatekeeper Staff, the first of a long series. Highly enough. Really fun. Let's see. I also had, I don't know if it's going to be here. New release. Okay, so the new release that I did enjoy here, the Indian Card. So the Indian Card, oh, I'm going to forget the name of the author here. Carrie. And I was trying to read this as a buddy read with Amy at A Star Reads, but she had to put it down like a year ago and has just picked it back up. So I don't know where she is with it. The Indian Card, Who Gets to Be Native in America by Carrie Lowry Schuetpeltz. And so this is someone who has struggled with Native identity and undertook this exploration in a memoir-ish book that also looks at history. So we've got history, we've got memoir, and we've got Indigenous culture. She talks a little bit about legal issues. She also talks about identity issues in America. And I found this really fascinating. It sort of overlapped with my listening to a podcast that is about adoption and foster kids and the legal system and that terrible situation and a lot of other things I was reading. So I found this to be really sparking some biblio-serendipity because of other things that I was reading about the Indigenous situation in America. So that was really great. I'm glad that I read this for HRCYED. And then the final one was also a new release that I probably wouldn't have picked up at the moment, except for HRCYED, and that is Wooing the Witch Queen. So this is by another Stephanie. Let me make sure I have the name right. Stephanie Burgess. Yes. Stephanie Gillis, Stephanie Burgess. And Wooing the Witch Queen is the first in a new series by her. It is about witches. It's in a world that has magic and dragons and other creatures, as well as goblins and orcs and sort of your variety of fantasy creatures. And the themes are about inclusion and equality and all the best things, as well as being a 5-star romance. So I really loved the vulnerability of the characters and the forced proximity of the love story. And just like, I'm very happy that I found this new author to find more books from. So that's awesome. So those are the great like finds that I'm very thankful to have been forced to read because of HRCYED, because of these focused areas that I was emphasizing. Now, the ones that I wasn't as successful in, the prompts for me, the ones that I missed, obviously, the red things that you can see in here, the red boxes are the ones that I did not get to, those 13 out of 139. A book in the year that I was born, 1981, not really any good ones. Classic, The Goose Girl, I didn't end up reading. A couple of Spiff Bows because they just got left till the end. Direct from the indie author book. I bought it, but I just didn't read it. A couple of the Queer Rainbow Challenge because I didn't have them and just didn't get around to it. I left them till the end. Same with these garage sale books, blurbs on a book. That was a hard one. I thought I'd finally cracked it, and then I didn't end up reading these 2 historical fictions at the end. And this one that I was just afraid of the whole time, the 500-page book in one day. So I didn't get to that because I was too afraid it would sort of knock me off my mental health balance to try to devote a whole day to it. So those weren't very successful. The lowest rated books that I ended up reading were okay, but again, they're turned out to be lowest rated for a reason. Even 3.5 stars, underneath 3.5 stars was her line. And yeah, none of them ended up being like standouts. The new releases, some of those that I read, like Julius that I just reviewed, turned out to be really not up my alley, but that's what I found and tried to shoehorn in, which didn't work. And the crowdfunded book, The Murder in the Climate Assembly, which I also just reviewed in this video. I really liked the idea. I wanted to support the effort, but like was not my style. So shoehorning, surprise, did not work. So lessons learned. All right, so let me take that out. Is there anything else that I marked for HRCYED? What did I miss? What did I read just for HRCYED? What am I glad made me read? So I think that kind of covers it. Let me just visit the chat to see if there's anything else about this. Oh, okay. So we're going to go back, revisit Ven's question about schools, the conveyor belt of youth for obedience rather than nurturing freedom of thought and creativity. Yes, you can fight against it. I'm trying to help people with some critical thinking with my Agitation August. So hopefully Ven will help with that when he comes on the channel. Cat Paw says, signed for a place yesterday, picking up keys today. Yes. Okay, that woke up Bean. Sorry. That's awesome to hear. Yes. Exhausting, stressing out for sure, but hopefully this will help after. Just get over that hump, right? Good luck with the move, says Jim. Cat Paw says, spectacular. Congrats on almost getting there. Still a massive achievement. I think this is for just the HRCYED number. So yeah. And then wishing you a smooth move from Elaine. Excellent. Congrats on the move from Eva. So all these people wishing you good thoughts. Hopefully that helps you get over the hump. You can rewind while there are no ads, Eva. Because I don't want to repeat myself for people who are on the replay. I should have stayed in the chat. Was hilarious. Game was slow. We're talking about Ven's live. Anita says, Stephanie Burgess is a great author. Loved her book Snow Spelled, which I think is a bit backlist of a title because I think I wrote that down as a possibility and then didn't end up going with it. Yeah, but you had some great recommendations for the Spiffbo category. That was good. Eva says, great job. Thank you. Very nice, Margaret. You did not fail. That is huge. Yeah. Well, according to Stephanie, I did fail. But like I said, according to me, I failed with an A-, which I will take as a win. So yeah, so that's my update and like lessons learned from HRCYED. And I'm very thankful that Stephanie's doing all this work. And I think she's doing a great job with the sort of 2 horns of the challenge, which I think is great to get people to read. Okay. Taking back up, hopefully I'll be able to figure this out. Taking back up with the books. I've got more books to review. So we've got comfort read, not HRCYED book. Grace Burrows, one of my favorite historical romance authors, Tremaine's True Love. I would say this is a quick comfort read. Took me one day to the next. It's about a business acquaintance that becomes embroiled in the family drama, and he finds a way to resolve the danger to them. And then the two love interests both admit wrongheadedness, and that's a great happy ever after. It was okay. It was good, but not one of my favorites of hers. It seemed a little muddled, so it was fine. We also have next The Thursday Murder Club, which could have been a HRCYED book because this was recommended to me by Amrita by the Book, which is a channel that doesn't post anymore, and I do miss Amrita. So Richard Osman, famous British dude, started this series, been very successful. I think it's finished and he's gone on to a new series now. I am finally just getting to this one, which is like from a long time ago because Amrita has not been active for a long time. I would say it's funny, it's good, it's well written, but the resolution was folded up in too many other mysteries. So basically they took every red herring and then like solved it. And it made it feel kind of like Lord of the Rings at the end with Return of the King and how it was then ending, and then another ending, and then another ending, and how you had to wrap all those different things. So I was not a fan. So I don't think I'll continue, but I'm glad I tried it out. And there was a lot of like funny British humor, pensioners, ex-spies, like fun opportunities. There is sort of a trend of these books about like ex-spies that are retired and doing their own thing and having a club of it, but maybe I'll try a different one because good enough. Good enough. I've got Mystery of the Sorrowful Maiden. So this is one that I bought for Independent Bookstore Day. This is a series that I think has 2 books in it. It's by Kate Saunders. I bought it new, and I bought it at Monarch Books in Arroyo Grande. It was okay. It's a historical fiction with a widow heroine investigator, and it involves theater drama, pardon the pun, or don't, and a cold case. So she gets into this situation because she's negotiating a settlement between a man and his wife who want to be estranged because he has a mistress. But then it turns into a cold case because a dead body is found, and then another dead body is found, and then another, it sort of devolves because there's a lot of melodrama. There was too much melodrama for me, and the nugget at the middle that was the origin point of all this drama is not my favorite. It's one of my least favorite tropes, and I don't want to spoil it, but Anne Perry has used it several times, and I've DNF'd books because of it. So if you know me, you know what it was, and like, not my thing. Well written, interesting, plots and fun character, but I don't, not my favorite. So we're not gonna keep going with that one. The next one is a historical romance by a friend of mine. So indie author of historical romance, Edie K. I actually asked my sister to go to a book fair to pick this up so that Edie could sign it to me, which is super special. Now, this is the 4th in a series about women mountaineers in the 1860s and 70s. This one takes place near the Matterhorn, as you can see, but they're standalone. This is not like the Boudica series. You can just pick them up separately. So I think I have the first one, but haven't read it, and then ended up reading this 4th one because I have it here in physical form instead of an ebook. So better. And what I will say about this one is, let's see, Women Mountaineers. It has a very similar theme to Tremaine's True Love, actually, because it's about setting women's independence and their callings and their like passions in life up against men's desire to protect them / control them, depending on who the man is. And so I thought it was really interesting to see 2 books that had that same theme as their main romantic tension. So we have a lovely character here in our heroine who wants to go climb the Matterhorn, do her thing, wants to publish as a adventuress, I should say, but by the laws of the times, the society that does those things doesn't allow women to publish. So anyway, there's lots of sort of little conflicts that build up to a resolution where they end up both liking each other, which is great. Yeah, a little spicy and lots of great historical details. So Edie K, everyone who likes that sort of spicy, independent women making their way through the world, I highly recommend. The series is called The Ladies Alpine Society. So that was fun. And then my last 2 books are library books. I don't know. I think I've talked about them before, but not reviewed them before. So research books. interlibrary loan. We've got 19th century African-American speeches in Britain and Ireland. And of course, I don't want to remove this because I get fined if I do, but it looks like a cool cover from what I can see of it. It's talking about various African-Americans from the 19th century. Okay, so from 1800 to 1900, and whether they were born free or they were formerly enslaved, they traveled to the UK to talk and go on the circuit to reach people with their speeches to try to, raise money for abolition, to raise awareness about the cause in America, because while Britain had a certain trajectory on the abolition pathway, America was far behind. And so if we had people who were activists in America, they often traveled to the place that was a little further ahead in terms of equality and rights, and also very rich and could contribute to the fight in America. So I was using this as a source for a very specific time period. So I sort of skipped around and I found the person who may be a cameo real person in my current work in progress. I'm currently editing my 8th book, which is the second in my new series, The Widening Gyre. And I just went back a couple days ago. I'm just starting the editing process, and I'm not sure where he will appear, but we'll be figuring that out. That is my job right now. So I get to return that book, and after I write a few more of my notes down in a notebook, I will return this book. But this is the other interlibrary loan. It's The Irish in the West of Scotland, also for research. I was pleased as punch to find this one when I was looking around, because it's the Irish in the west of Scotland in the right period, and the topic is trade unions, strikes, and political movements. So, this made my little heart happy. This is about organizers, leaders of burgeoning, not fly by night, but, maybe only existed for a year or two, newspapers and organizations and societies, the factions within them, the conflicts between them and the law, the exact right area, as I said, and with some info from Eastern Scotland or London to sort of reinforce the wave or the trends, which is what I do in my books as well. Because often I cannot find the exact historical fact that I want. And so I will have to infer from what was going on in London, what was going on 10 years before, what happened 10 years later, what was going on in the next county over, and just sort of extrapolate from that. So this author does that as well in nonfiction, which makes me feel a whole lot better. So the edits proceed apace, and we'll see how long it takes me. Maybe I'll be blowing through it by the end of July, because I'm finally footloose and fancy free. We'll see. Let's see. Jim says, I have a Richard Osman on my shelves. Is it one of the sequels to the Thursday Murder Club? Curious. Laws of the Times. I am reading the 5th in the Tate and Bell Mysteries by Irina Shapiro, which is an author that you discovered and really liked, I believe. Set in the 1850s, London. Gemma Bell, a former nurse in the Crimea, we've seen that before in the Anne Perry books, is frustrated about the lot of women at the Times. Yeah. So when I said those 2 books are about women's callings and men who want to protect them from the danger, in the mountaineering book, it's a guy who isn't sure of his own place, and a woman who knows what she wants. So it's sort of more focused on the woman. In Tremaine's True Love, the woman also knows that she wants to be like a medical help to the people in her parish, the poor, who don't have a person to turn to. But the guy just sees that as too dangerous. Like, if she's going to be a mother and coming home, she's going to pass this to her family, and she could be contagious, etc. And she's not really taking into account the fact that everyone is afraid for her when she goes off and does these good deeds. So there's right on both sides and there's wrong on both sides, but it's from a good place. So that's how they end up both liking each other at the end, because they see where they're both right and they're both wrong, which is lovely. But yeah, medical things like being a nurse in the Crimea. Let's see, for funsies or a current read. Let's see if I have a banner for this. Let's see. Does anyone have any upcoming events to share? I do not really, but I do have current reads to share that are related to some events, so I thought I'd let you know about those. So currently I am reading The Sisterhood by Courtney Thorson, which is about Black authors in the 70s. So kind of like the trade unions book, where it was talking about how this short period they had a wave of this, and then it morphed into a wave of that, and this is how people were agitating for their rights. This is Black authors and how there was sort of a wave of Black authored books and like a literary renaissance of Black women writers, especially in the 80s. And that's helped a lot by this network that they had, and they called it The Sisterhood. So I thought it'd be interesting to read about, and I got that book. And that is a result of my quick to judge tag. So if you haven't watched that and you're curious what other books didn't make the cut, I popped the link in the chat because I did 2 tags that were about your TBR. One was more, how do you process, how do you decide? And one was, oh, let's take 10 books and see which one we want. And I picked one nonfiction and one fiction. So that is what I'm reading currently. I'm also reading East of Eden as part of the Summer of Steinbeck by John Steinbeck. And just to note, some people are saying Steinbach, and I have another favorite author, Alice Steinbach or Steinbach, and it's a different name. So please say Steinbeck when you talk about John. Yeah, so I'm not really enjoying it. There's some beautiful parts of it, but we'll see how far I get if I keep going. A lot of people are involved in the Summer of Steinbeck. I read Grapes of Wrath in June, and I was waiting for East of Eden to come in July because it was originally going to be a buddy read with Gareth. And now it's like, dozens of people reading Steinbeck. So we'll see how the discussion goes on Boxer. And finally, I am reading Emergency Sex and Other Desperate Measures by a trio of authors. And this is about 1991 aid workers in different places around the world. And we seem to descend into worse conditions as we go. So I'm not sure where it ends up, but this is someone's pick for Agitation August. So as I prepare to speak with the guests every weekday in August, who I'm hosting on my channel, I'm going to be reading books for most of them and discussing different topics that get these guests agitated and wanting to take a stand and wanting to resist and wanting to change the system. So that is the book for Marion at Writer in Rwanda is her YouTube channel. She's got various handles I followed from her over the years. But if you are curious about that, it is announced in this live stream. So I'll just pop that in there if you're curious. I did a time stamp, so you can skip right to the announcement to hear more about Agitation August. I do have a couple slots open if other people feel like they have a book that gets them agitated and wanting to change society and build that new unrealized world of justice. Hit me up. I'm very open to it. I might not be able to read because I've already got a reading schedule for this, but I'd be very open to people coming on and talking to me about their thing. I love to hear what people are excited about. So let's see if anyone else has upcoming events. Jim says East of Eden is my favorite Steinbeck. That is interesting, Jim. I don't know. This is my first time reading it, and I hope it gets better. I'm 14 chapters in. So, all right. Well, if we don't have other events coming up and we're just going to be reading good books, I'll say thank you all for watching me here live. Thank you all for watching on the replay. Just remember, my practice is I keep it non-monetized for the live stream so you don't have to faff about. And then afterwards, I go monetize it. So when people are watching, they'll see ads at different points. And I appreciate any time they can spare to watch them because, I mean, it's nice to have a few pennies come in. So that is my thing for today. And remember to diversify your reading shelf. I hope, Cat Paw, you're able to bounce back and, add to your library after you move. For everyone else, please take care of yourselves. A cat paw too. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to hydrate, and don't forget to diversify your books. I will see you again soon on Sunday for my regular Sunday stream. And it is Wednesday, so happy Dimples Day, everybody. Talk to you again soon. Bye.